You're listening to the TV Obsessive channel, presented by tvobsessive.com.
Hello, welcome back to the TV Obsessive podcast, episode 28. My name is Ryan Kirksey, a writer contributor to the site, and I'm joined as always by Cameron Crane. He's the executive editor. He's the puppet master. He pulls all the strings. Cameron, how are you today?
Doing pretty well. Yeah, there's a marionette
That's right.
master. I flubbed that. We'll cut that. I'm kidding. Yeah, we're tvobsessive.com. I hope you check out the site. So we're here on December 26th to talk about Fargo season 5, episode 7, which aired tonight. We can put this out right after the episode aired, as we have been doing. Given that it's the holidays and all of that, we're going to break a little bit from our usual format. We're gonna no news and notes and chit chat, what have you, on this one. We're just going to jump right into talking about Fargo, get this out for you. Hopefully you've been listening along all season, and then we'll pick up next week and sort of go back to the usual plan.
Yeah, it'll be a little bit shorter one. We've got family to ignore, we got presents to unwrap, we got things to do.
Yeah, yeah, indeed. And then I imagine others do as well. It's a weird week, you know.
Yeah, yeah. This is this
And
is this will be a nice length of you want to go take a walk and get away from everybody. We'll keep it nice and short for you.
right, yeah. So okay, so given that, we're just going to jump into talking about Fargo here. So, big spoiler warning before we do for Fargo season 5, episode 5. The title of this episode being Linda, which I'm sure we'll talk about along with other things. But do note here the spoilers are on the table for everything in Fargo through this episode, tonight's episode. So you're free to listen if you haven't watched it. Everyone's free. But just kind of rambling here to say, again, spoiler warning if you want to
Right,
say
right.
oops and drop out before we tell you what happens in a relatively eventful episode, I think. So we're
Yes,
gonna start
that's
talking about it now.
well, here we go. Episode 7 of season 5, Linda. We didn't see any of daughter Nadine in episode 6, but this is heavy story for her. In episode 7, she is on the run, and Dot/Nadine tracks down the woman named Linda who brought her into Roy Tillman's house. Linda is apparently another escapee who has started a secluded or secret camp for other battered women to bond, tell their stories, for escape the lives that they had before. After first relenting, Dot agrees to go along with the purpose of the camp, which is to make her own puppet and retell her story. And that helps convince Linda to go back with her so that they can at least legally take down Roy Tillman. But we learned soon after that this was all a dream. A drowsy Dot had sort of nodded off at a diner where she was eating. And I guess none of this was actually real. She wakes up, goes outside, and there's a huge car, you know, crash, explosion,
It's
something.
snowing and the semi goes out of control. Yeah.
Yeah. And she is hit. She is knocked unconscious and wakes up in a hospital where it turns out that they have contacted her former husband, Roy, who is there and has found her. Meanwhile, Roy's son, Gator, just continues to impress with his levels of incompetence by shooting the wrong guy, killing the woman that Munch was staying with while he's on the hunt for him. So we have his story to track down, and then in some more sweet and tender moments, Wayne and Scotty bond as they wait for Dot to come home. So this was the episode. They new-hearted us. They Saint Elsewhere us by giving us this really powerful story and then calling it all a dream. Thoughts on that as a storytelling device there, Cameron?
Yeah, so I think it makes sense to talk about that first a bit. And I guess I want to start even like a step before that in
Yeah,
terms of um, saying something about my enjoyment of the episode or lack thereof. I don't know about you, but I found this episode to be very frustrating.
I did too.
Um, not to say that it's bad, that's not the claim I'm making, but I didn't really enjoy it. Maybe you enjoyed it more than I did. I'm looking forward to talking it through because one of the reasons I like doing stuff like this, writing on TV and doing the podcast with you and so on, is that sometimes it's the case that in doing so, I appreciate things more. You
Yeah,
know what I mean?
exactly.
And I think that might be the case here because Fargo's a good show. Um, so yeah, it was a dream. I mean, it was a little bit, tiny bit ambiguous, but maybe it wasn't. I
Yeah.
mean, it's very much framed. We saw her early in the episode at that diner. She'd been dozing off in her car. She got those pancakes, you know. So I think that is relatively explicit in the framing and direction of the episode. But Dot
Mhm.
herself is confused,
Yeah.
which I guess we'd have to read as her dream having been so vivid that even when she wakes up in the hospital, she's asking about Linda.
Yeah. And correct me if I'm wrong on my timeline here. When she goes to the oil rig and finds the postcard, that's pre-diner. Am I right about that?
No, I believe it was
Or is that after,
afterwards.
that's after the diner?
I
Okay.
should have double checked this
So
apparently
again, so
because
it's kind of the
we're
situation of
remembering oppositely.
yeah, is Linda real or not real? Based on when the timeline of that postcard is, could be an actual story or not.
See, I mean, I think Linda's a real person.
Yeah.
I think the episode establishes that. But I was wondering about her going to the oil rig, and I was wondering why she went to the oil rig. And in my memory, I think that's in the dream already. If we're interpreting the big long segment as a dream, um, should have gone back and checked that for sure. But I think
You,
that's the
you,
case.
you talk a little bit more about that. I'm checking as we
Oh, yeah. Hold up. Yeah, check. Um, well, I mean, it matters because look, how do we interpret this? I thought there was a real question, remains a real question about what Dot was doing there. And that whole scene where she goes to the oil rig, I think remains something of a question. There's something to interpret here. She goes there, there's a hole, it's covered up with metal, right? And then underneath the metal, and this is like the absolute middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And underneath the metal, there's a bunch of rocks.
Yes.
And then one of the rather large rocks is actually a container that she opens up. Um, so I don't know about you, but the first thing that occurred to me was that it was a gun that she was going after.
Yeah. Yeah. So my thought is, okay, the things she needs if she ever has to escape, her go bag, her whatever it is, the things that she needs to sort of keep her life a secret or escape from something are buried in this place so she can go get it. And I have just confirmed the first time we see Dot in this episode, she is in the diner. So everything after that is presumably after she has nodded off, including going to the oil rig and seeing the postcard.
We see her driving and dozing off before she goes to the
We see,
diner.
yeah, yeah. So we see her
Okay.
driving. We see her arrive at the diner,
And
and
then
then oil rig after that.
because I think that she actually sees a postcard for the Utopia camp on the wall of the diner.
Okay.
I noticed that. Um, so it's kind of pretty weird because now we're saying, okay, it's a dream, but I feel like we have to presume that is a real place.
Yeah.
Do you agree? I mean, it it seemed to me like she was looking for something else, and instead she found the postcard from Linda that says, "I'm sorry." Is that how it landed for you, or
Yeah. It does. It does seem that way because it's almost like it's like the Zeowatneo postcard in Shawshank Redemption. He sends him something. It's postmarked from a place, so he knows where he is. But there's no point in burying that, hiding that. It doesn't. No one's coming for that or no one's looking for it. So why would you out in the middle of nowhere, as you said, bury this postcard? So it's almost like, does Linda know about something else she put there and she put this I'm sorry card there after she raided that stash or took whatever it was, or that's her way to invite Dot to where she is. That's sort of the sense I got as well.
that was the sense that I got. Now, in retrospect, we say, well, this was an extended dream sequence.
Hmm.
Um, how do we read this? I'm still prone to think that it's a real place. I guess I'm still prone to thinking that it's something else that she buried there that she'd be going there to look for, because as you said,
Yeah.
wouldn't make any sense for her to be looking for that postcard. Wouldn't make any sense at all, right? Um, and indeed, this is maybe our first clue in a sense that this is a dream because it's wonky in its logic, you
Yeah.
know. So I think that remains a question. And then, well, let's talk about the dream,
Yeah.
because what's interesting when a show does something like this, that's really extended, is um you say, well, okay, that was just a dream, but it would be wrong to say, well, it doesn't matter or something like that because it wasn't real. Clearly, this matters. We get filled in Dot's backstory, but there's some other stuff going on here too to talk about, like what's going on with this camp.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that because it would shock me if Fargo somehow came out through the next 3 episodes and said none of this was real, none of it happened, or this is not a real person, or this backstory wasn't what actually happened to her. I mean, it'd just be okay. You just wasted a 50-minute episode. What was the point of this? So yeah, it would shock me if they came out and that was the revelation there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the point at least is to give us the backstory,
Yeah,
but we don't even know. We don't even know if that camp is real.
right.
I think we can presume Linda's real. I don't know if we even know for sure that Dot set out in search of Linda. Maybe.
Yeah, that's one thing we don't know now that we know the timeline of diner, oil rig, postcard, camp. Was that what she was looking for? Or is this sort of the thing that she needed to do something, know something, be motivated to pursue something, and give us as viewers the background of what actually happened to her? Similar. Again, this is pushed up against what we saw at the very end of season 6 or episode 6. But the last thing we see is that file open and all these pictures of Dot just beaten and bruised and bloody, right? So combined with this episode, it gives us this full story of what's happened to her.
Right. So I'm thinking, and part of this is a matter of thinking, what could Fargo, the TV show, do to kind of resolve some of these ambiguities in the future? I'm thinking the oil rig location is a real location
Mm-hmm.
that we'll eventually return to, and that will start answering maybe some of these questions. I'm thinking that Linda's a real person who did indeed leave, and that
Yeah.
that backstory is true, but I don't think we know for sure anything further. Like maybe the whole idea that what Linda did was go and found a camp where she helps other Lindas, other
Mm-hmm.
abused women, right? They all go by Linda, and maybe all of that is just a fantasy.
Yeah.
Because again, I believe you do see the postcard for the camp in the diner.
Yeah.
So maybe this is all just her subconscious mind confabulating, but it is rather elaborate.
And a lot of heaven imagery, right? Just everything is pristine there. It's in this white location, Saint Linda, just sort of a idyllic. We share everything, we do everything for one another, right? So just sort of this have to go to a place, have to learn that there are other people that share your story. And this is something that, again, we're left with this cliffhanger at the end of the episode. What does that now mean Dot can do, is capable of doing, or will do with Roy?
Yeah. I mean, the episode's also frustrating because the end is so
Yeah.
unenjoyable in narrative terms.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, if we're thinking about this as a dream, someone like Sigmund Freud would say dreams are, a matter of wish fulfillment.
Hmm.
Although it's a bit more complex than that. That could fit here, I think.
Yeah. I think so.
What Dot would like to believe is that Linda has this heart of gold where she's gone up and has saved and helped other people. And then, of course, it wouldn't be so easy as arriving and saying, "Hey, I need you to leave and help me," because she's so committed to helping these other women, right?
Right.
Um, but maybe none of that's the case.
Yeah, you're right. Now that you sort of piece those things together, she is so, at least in this dream or in this version of reality, she is so committed to helping these other people. In what world would she actually leave to go, to go confront someone when she's got another mission, which is to help all these other people. But it's almost like Dot is running, she's hiding, she's trying to get away. It's like she needs someone to tell her, yeah, let's go back. You've confronted the things, let's go back and do the work you need to do. Whether there's someone there literally next to her or next to her in terms of just spiritually or metaphorically, that's something that Dot needs to go do.
Yeah, I do wonder because she told Indira that she needed her to watch Scotty for a couple of days.
Mm-hmm.
So it does kind of seem like Dot has a plan,
Yes.
you know. But what is that? I'm just trying to point out, I think meaningfully it's in question.
Yeah.
And if it's, if her plan was to find Linda, how does she know where Linda is if the dream's just a dream? I don't know. There's just it's really the fact that all of that's a dream sequence, muddies the water significantly.
Yeah. And what's the end game when the police, the FBI, several other groups and agencies and people are looking for her? What does she think will happen if she comes back with Linda?
Yeah, and I mean also, yeah, because that's the other thing that I found a bit frustrating as it was going before realizing it was a dream, is that she wants Linda to go back with her to testify to the authorities and so on. I mean, if you think about everything that we've seen so far, she's entirely been trying to keep the authorities out of it.
Exactly.
And it's not at all clear that she would even need Linda.
Exactly.
I mean, if she were to go to Indira, if she were to go to those FBI agents and really,
yeah, they've got a police file. They've got the person who experienced it. What, this whole theme of this show to this point has been that we don't trust the authority. The authority is not the ones that are going to get the right things done. Why would Dot feel like that's the path they need to take down? She seems like more, I want to set a trap for him and get rid of him once and for all. That's the type of person she seems to me.
right. And so maybe her plan is more like that. And then the dream is of somehow being able to do this in the right way. And Linda is out there as a sort of lost mother figure for her in a way. And so there's also that aspect of, and then, still in the dream, she asked Linda in the car, why didn't you take us with you?
Yeah.
And she said, well, okay, you can, you'll tell me when you're ready or whatever.
Yeah.
That was right before she wakes up, more or less. So there's that too. I mean, she was basically abandoned by this woman who had taken her in, but then she also feels just kind of put her right into the situation with Roy, and again almost used that in order to get away herself. And there's a lot of complex emotions here. That's also,
three things. I mean, number one, bring her into that situation when she understands what's going on there. Number two, setting up an environment where the two of them can be alone. And then number three, abandoning her. It's like, I got some problems with the way you've done this, Linda, if this is what actually happened.
Yeah. So, I mean, I feel like to some extent, now that we know it's a dream in particular, is this the way that Dot wants to believe that Linda is actually good? And maybe we'll find out down the line that while Linda's real and out there, she's not like this at all.
Right. Yeah.
So that'll be
say Carrie Matchett as Linda. Yeah, it'd be great if she came back. Very good, subtle, subdued performance. But yeah, that would be interesting if she sort of came back as another tiger, as it were.
Right, or she's just off doing whatever, and it's like, no, I'm not going to help you. What are you talking about? She's a bad person. You want to talk about the camp a little bit more? Talk about the puppets.
Sure.
It was kind of interesting. What do you think of this? Like therapeutic technique, I suppose we could call it.
And I don't certainly know much about whether or how much or to what extent this is done with patients, people that have actually gone through this, but sort of it's obviously a shameful thing that they're talking about. It's not shameful that they've done, but shameful that they've experienced it. They're embarrassed by it. It defines them. And so it's a way of showing these ladies what has happened without having to put their, their faces out there, sort of like this, kind of the in a parallel world, sort of an Alcoholics Anonymous, where you are there upfront, accountable, what you've done. This is sort of I've experienced it. I'm ashamed by it. It's defined me for so long. Let me tell you my story without having to sort of put myself literally inside of it. I'll put a representation of myself.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
To put the time in, make the puppet,
Mm-hmm.
and that then the idea seems to involve a certain kind of separation from that past identity, right? You're imbuing
Yeah.
that into the puppet, and then you're going to let that go,
Yeah.
and ultimately take on a new name.
Yeah.
Which
Take on a new name.
Yeah.
And I think they say that some people leave this place, and presumably they leave their puppet behind. So sort of that symbolic act as well. I don't think we know that for certain, but I mean that would make sense.
Yeah. I mean, there is a question, of course. Again, it's not real. I guess it's not real, There is a question of these other Lindas walking around, like have they just not chosen their new name yet or what?
Yeah.
But I do think given all of this and her affirmation of herself as now Dorothy, that we should respect
Mm-hmm.
that and refer to her as Dorothy or Dot, because she's precisely saying I'm not Nadine,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it's interesting, very interesting. I was stunned. I had no idea how to interpret it when she walks into the place and they're putting on a puppet show of wife abuse. I was like, what is happening?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and this was clearly a very unique way, not only to represent what they've gone through, but also to tell the story. But, it's not a insignificant piece of the episode that is this sort of marionetted version of what happened, right? So I think that once this airs, there'll be some really good conversation. I know, we saw something that said that FX really purposely intentionally did it this way, and got some of the best people in the world to help them do this. So yeah, just a very unique, never seen before way of telling a story like this.
Yeah, and I thought the stuff with the puppets was very well done.
Yep.
And did open a way of telling that backstory really well.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly much better than you can imagine some other option, like we're gonna have a flashback and we're gonna cast, some other young woman to play the younger version of Dorothy dot Nadine,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, and you could. It's almost like you couldn't effectively show all the creepy stuff in the same sort of way without it feeling too.
Yeah.
What I don't know what word to use. Too icky. Too bad.
Yeah. I also wonder. I mean, I don't necessarily think this would be the case. We've seen them do some pretty disgusting stuff this season, but John Hamm saying, I don't want to do those
Well,
things, right?
yeah. I mean, and also then the portrayal of him as a puppet
Mm-hmm.
was interesting because it didn't feel like John Hamm, but it was effective for what was going on,
Yeah.
insofar as what we were seeing was Dot's representation of Roy. And I think that insofar as that's what we're supposed to be getting here, doing
Yeah.
it through the puppets was more effective than any other option, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was a good way to do it.
I was also sort of struck at how they portrayed Gator during that scene, right?
Right.
The idea that we've seen this version of Gator for 6 episodes and him trying to display sort of sense of masculinity and power. But, when this sort of stuff was going on with Linda, apparently, while Nadine was in the house, he would go apparently to her for comfort, it seemed like. Now
Yeah, we
he's,
see that in the puppet show.
yeah,
Yeah, him
exactly.
like resting his head on her lap and so on and so forth. And it is worth thinking about. At one
Yeah.
point, Gator was a scared little boy.
Yeah. And now
Still is, actually. That we
he,
shouldn't say.
he is.
He's
He
still a
is.
scared little boy.
He is masking it or trying to mask it, and he's trying to become more like his father every day, it seems like. But in the end, he's afraid of that. He doesn't know how to do it. Maybe his incompetence is just a sense of actually I don't want to be who this guy is, but you never know.
Yeah, what does Dot say? She says something like, you can tell he wants to be good, but he wants to be like his dad more.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, so that's good. Well, let's jump to Gator and in the present.
Yeah.
Going after Munch, which was, never a good plan. Got the tracker on the car, gets a nice big gun. And actually, I realize now we almost have to take a step back and work through some stuff with old Munch before we can properly talk about this, don't we?
Oh, yeah.
Right? Because the other guy, there's a
Yeah.
question. Another question that arose in this episode is Munch has called this older woman Mama,
Yeah.
which I took at face value.
I took it face value too, and she hadn't kicked him out. So apparently we thought it was the real mama.
And I still think maybe it is, but he just says, I live here now.
Yeah.
But this other guy shows up who calls her Ma,
Yeah.
who I think is pretty clearly her son,
Yeah.
you know. Not a nice guy.
Definitely not.
He's come around to take money from his mother, who like doesn't have money, dude.
Yeah.
Um, and Munch confronts him, or he confronts Munch, or both, and he's like demanding that Munch pay rent.
Yeah.
But this is the wrinkle to the question of whether this is really Munch's mother, because this guy does not seem to recognize old Munch at all.
Right.
Munch gives him the roll of cash. He's like, yeah, same thing every month, which it looks like way too much money, first of
Yep.
all. And then Munch follows him outside and kills him. Right?
Yeah. I don't know. Does the outside in the middle of the day with an axe seem like I don't know, it doesn't seem like a Munch thing to do, but I guess you don't disrespect mama like that.
Well, that was interesting because he says he's not paying rent. He says it's a trade. He says
Yeah.
he says he's there to protect her. Right.
Yeah.
So actually, he is doing what he's supposed to do, I guess, protecting her from her asshole son. I guess hitting him with the axe in broad daylight. I don't know. It's very Fargo.
Very much so.
It's very. It's like Steve Buscemi, the guy in the wood chipper kind of feeling.
Yeah, when I put in our notes, there were some aspects of this felt very much like a Fargo episode. This scene and the Gator scene, this very beginning and sort of very end with Gator and Munch. Those really felt like, yeah, we're back in movie Fargo, season 1 and 2 Fargo. Very, very, very similar in tone.
Yeah. So I felt like we had to hit on this first because when Gator shows up, it would seem that Munch has put this guy's corpse in the rocking chair, and he's pulling it with a rope in order to rock the chair right in front of the window, which heavily implies that he knew Gator was coming.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think Gator is the toughest guy to figure out in the world, but Munch has certainly got the schemes and the plots necessary to outsmart Gator. Whether he will with Roy or not, I'm not sure, but yeah, Gator is not long for us if we put the two of them up against each other.
I wouldn't think so, but I again wonder. Just another question, sort of. Okay, well, so what exactly was Munch's plan here? Presumably he saw the tracker on his car. That's not super hard.
Yeah.
And so he thinks, well, okay, this idiot put a tracker on my car. He's going to come after me. And so decides to take the opportunity to use this guy's corpse as, a fake him, put him right in front of the window. I mean, like, I guess this is making sense, but you don't know when Gator's coming, and you're just going to sit there and pull a rope
all night long. Yeah.
All night long. Like, okay, I'll allow it because the only other thing we've seen him do is sit in that rocking chair like doing nothing.
Exactly.
So it's like, okay, maybe so far so good, maybe. But so Gator shows up, right? We mentioned he's got a big gun,
Yes.
and he thinks, aha, got him. And he shoots the guy in the head through the window. Um, but then it seems that the money was still in the car,
Yeah.
and he's starting to rob the money from the car. And Mama shows up and says, "Ah, you thief!" Starts beating him, and he knocks her over. She hits payment and dies. But then Munch comes out. So the question I'm trying to get at is what was Munch's plan? Because I almost expected him to come out sooner, like if he knew that the next move, if he left the money in the car on purpose,
Yeah.
it's like his plan should have been come out and disrupt the attempt to break into the car, don't you think?
That's exactly what I thought was going to happen, was as he's struggling to get the money out of the car, Munch comes up behind him. But then maybe he was going to and wasn't expecting Mama to be walking up at that, that same time. Doesn't want to do anything in front of her, doesn't want to put her in danger. Maybe that's what happened, but I was with you. I expected him to come up at the same moment that Gator's trying to get the money out of the car.
Yeah, okay. I mean, you're right though. As they intercut the shots, we knew she
Mm-hmm.
was coming. Foreshadowing, as it were. We saw her
Yep.
with her little push cart. We didn't see her, but we knew it was her because there's a bunch of beer in there.
All the beer. Yeah.
Yeah, and just like obviously it was going to be her anyway. So there was foreshadowing to that. I mean, maybe you're right in what you just said in the margins there, like that his plan was to come out while Gator was breaking into the car, but then he saw her approaching the house and wanted to wait for her to get into the house before he came out or something like
Yeah.
that.
I mean,
But
it's the only thing that makes sense if you're going to set this trap or think that he's coming. Yeah, what are you doing that for if you're not going to take advantage of his missed opportunity to go try and capture him or get him?
right, yeah, I think so. Because otherwise it's just weird. Um, the ultimate consequence being that Gator does get away with the money, right?
Hmm.
And then that couldn't have been much his plan. That wouldn't make sense. Um, but you know, Munch knows where he lives, and he knows where his father lives, and he knows where his father's family lives, and
Yeah,
the man's not going to take kindly to this. And he killed Mama, and
yeah. I mean, the thing that I guess continues to bother me about this Gator situation is he continues to do the exact opposite of what his dad tells him to do. I mean, literally the exact opposite.
yeah,
And the dad just keeps, okay, you're a loser. We got to fix this now. And no sense of like you're done. You're out of here. I mean, maybe this is the final straw. Who knows? But I mean, how much how much more this is Roy going to put up with?
yeah, right. I mean, I guess maybe it exemplifies in a certain way that kind of white male privilege or something
Yeah,
like this that Roy fully buys into, right? I mean,
yeah,
season 5 of Fargo is not subtle.
right,
And
right.
I've seen some people criticize it for that reason. I don't know if that's fair or not. I mean, you can criticize it for you want it to be more subtle, okay, but it's not. That's not what we're watching. I mean,
Yeah.
like the first time we meet Roy Tillman, he's literally giving a speech about the divinely ordained validity of patriarchy,
Hmm.
basically, right? Um, the natural order of things and so on, right? So, yeah, I agree. From one point of view, it doesn't make sense that Roy keeps kind of forgiving Gator and giving him more and more chances. But from another point of view, it kind of does because it's his
Yeah.
son and he's a man and he's the one to pass things down to, and he's got to get right eventually. Come
Yeah,
on, what are you gonna do, right? Like
this is
that
true.
Gator cannot do something so wrong as to really fall out of his good graces. Like you tie
Right.
it into that whole kind of worldview.
Yeah, no, it's true. I have an empire, a literal army that's developing. I have to have some kind of succession plan.
Well, and didn't he say something like his father and grandfather were sheriffs
Yes.
too, or something?
Yes.
Yeah, there's
Yes.
like a whole, patrilineal thing going on here.
Exactly.
But you are right to point out, Gator Dust is kind of, come on, Dan.
Yeah, no.
Not that Roy's a good guy, but like,
Yeah.
you could at least do what he says,
Yeah, I
you
know.
know? Um,
Oh boy. No, but you were right what you said earlier. That this was a very, very Fargo piece of the episode. I mean, I enjoyed it as much as Gator just drives me mad for how incompetent he is. This is great. Um, just standard Fargo fare right here.
yeah, and I do think I'm enjoying it more or appreciating it more and
Yeah,
retrospectively enjoying it
right,
more as we're
right.
talking through it, but it was everything was very frustrating,
Yeah,
but it clearly was on purpose.
yeah.
One of the little thing here, just to, hit on our friend Wayne. What do you think of his little scene at the car dealership?
I mean, I guess when you have half a brain, that logically makes sense. You're going to give one car, you're going to get another. I don't know this. I'm a little bit confused why they're taking him down this path. I mean, certainly narratively, what happened to him fit within what happened to their house on Halloween night, but just sort of why they're setting him up in these scenes where he's just it's almost like he's not there, but then when he sits down with Scotty in the bed, he's like got this creativity going, he's got this emotion going, he's got everything about him. And so I wasn't sure how to connect those two things. Like, is he here? Is he who he was before? Is he not? I just I need some a little bit of continuity there, I think.
Yeah, it is a little odd. Or, I mean, as you say, there's a question of what they're doing with it. I don't know
Yeah,
if it's at all realistic either.
yeah.
It kind of seems like after he was electrocuted, um, he is like, it's not. I think this relates to what you're saying, because it's not that he's just wholly stupid or something, but he's like a naive little child of a man.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you know um and get a car, give him a car.
Yeah.
It's in the Bible.
Yeah.
you know um
Just random short note. Great accent work by the car salesman in that scene.
yeah,
Very, very Minnesotan.
it's like what um but so I do think it's interesting in this regard that if we're thinking about what Wayne was like before
Mhm.
that accident, we call it that, he's electrocuted.
Yeah.
We can think about what's the difference, and um in a weird way, he strikes me now as more confident than
Mm.
he was before.
Yeah, that's true. Just sort of the sense of subservience is gone. He just sort of, I feel what I feel, and so I'm going to express that. I'm going to say it. I'm going to do whatever it is. Um, Instead of, I mean, even something as simple as instead of relying on a book and the words that they tell me to say, I'm going to come up with my own story, right? When he sits down with Scotty at night. So yeah, it could be that this has turned him into a new person.
Yeah, so I mean, I think potentially, if we're speculating about the narrative,
Yeah.
Wayne might be really important here, because we're thinking about all these characters, and everything is, or most of them are all like very cynical,
Yeah.
power grabbing, all these machinations and a lot of bad faith and all of
Yeah.
this, and they're kind of shaping up Wayne as this like naive warrior of good faith, potentially, I think.
Yeah.
um so I'm curious to see what they do with that.
Yeah. I very much am as well. Just a interesting segue or tangent from this performance here by David Risdall. I just was looking up his IMDb page. He did something recently for FX on Hulu, a movie called No Exit, and
Okay.
he was sort of a very creepy, unlikable character named Lars in that movie. So I just thought the parallel was interesting with the Lars and Fargo here,
Yeah.
and Risdall's Lars.
Yeah, but no Lars in this episode. We don't pick up on
No
the terror
Lars.
either. or Lorraine, or So I think in a meaningful way, this episode and the last episode were kind of a pair.
Yeah, agreed.
Insofar as in episode 6, Dot was absent, and
Yeah.
then here in episode 7, it's really Dot centric, and we don't check in with
Yeah.
other characters at all. And wait, I think no, Munch was in episode 6, but not in episode 5. Anyway, whatever.
Yeah.
The narrative works. You don't necessarily have to see everyone every episode, and it'll all come back around, I'm sure, eventually.
Yeah, no, you're right. I had some questions, had some frustrations with this episode, but talking through is going to help you understand maybe in the big picture how some of this fits in.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think that it's okay. So
Yeah.
we'll see where we go from here. It really does stick in my gut in a painful way that
Yeah.
we get the ending of Roy coming into her hospital room.
Yeah. I mean, you and I both, I think, are even though we have them, are sort of doing this week to week to try to stick with the experience of what it's like to watch this. That one was
I am
very difficult to say stop and not go on.
like, oh wow, man. I mean, but that's entirely in narrative terms. Like, it's really this is what they're doing to us, and he grabs her wrist and says, "I got you."
I got you. Yeah. Oh,
So I think we were talking last week about, well, what does Roy want to do with her?
exactly.
I think we have a somewhat clearer idea based on this week, but it's right in line probably with what I was suggesting last week about it being really, really dark.
Yes.
And like that needs to not be what happens now. So let's see what happens now.
Yeah. And you always kind of expected, okay, the goons are going after Dot, Gator's going after Dot. She can get away from the police. Now it's Roy. So what does she do? How does this? I mean, clearly we're not culminating in the next episode. We've got 3 left. So what happens here? I'm very interested to find out.
Yeah. Yeah. And how does Munch factor in? Who one can only presume is all out to kill Gator, at
Yes.
least.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe also Roy.
Yeah. It would not surprise me one bit. I mean, somebody's going to die in this episode.
Oh, I mean, yeah, well, someone's going to die. I mean, look, it doesn't mean that Old Munch is going to win either.
Right.
He's going to try to go kill Gator and maybe also Roy.
Yes.
So Gator's going to die, or Roy's going to die, or both, or Munch is going to die, or everyone's going to die, right? Like, it's possible that at the end of this, everyone's going to die, and Wade and Scotty go out for ice cream. Like, this is possible. Dude.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, that seems very logical for this.
Yeah. But okay, I think that about does it for this week. Hopefully you enjoyed the episode and enjoyed listening to the podcast here. Happy holidays to everyone. And we'll be back next week for our first podcast of 2024.
Yes.
Talking about the next episode of Fargo, season 5, episode 8. I guess it's called The Blanket, or just Blanket. Just Blanket. Just Blanket. And we'll be back to our usual plan there and talk about the news of the week and so on and so forth. So thanks for listening. Please leave a good review if you're so inclined. Check out the website, tvobsessive.com. You can follow us on social media if you want to do that. We also got a YouTube channel if you want to go there and get the podcast through YouTube with pretty bouncing bars that you can look at.
That's right.
You listen. It's kind of enjoyable. Yeah, think about it. That about does it for this week.
All right. Happy holidays, Cameron, and everyone out there. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.
All right. See you next year.
That's right.